All right, what's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in. I am Jason, and today I have got a very special guest for you guys. I'm going to introduce my new friend, Jeremy Crow. Jeremy is a very wise individual. I follow his work, and I am very proud and just glad to be able to call him an acquaintance, my new friend. So, everybody, I want you guys to welcome Jeremy. Jeremy, thank you for coming into my show. How are you doing today, sir?
Thanks for having me on. I'm doing great today. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right, man. I can't really complain. I really appreciate you coming on here, man. Like I've been following your work for a while. I've known who you are for quite maybe a year or two now, probably 2 years. And I've been following your work, and this is awesome that you were on here, and now I know you. And I was like, man, Jeremy is an inspiration to me because I am trying to go to the next step, maybe 3 steps further to get to his level. Jeremy has got platforms all over the place. He's doing so much for this movement. If you guys don't know Jeremy, I want you guys to check out Jeremy's stuff. And Jeremy, why don't you go ahead and explain who you are, your background, how'd you grow up? Just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. Well, I was raised Catholic. We weren't especially religious family, but they wanted to put me into Catholic school because my dad was in Catholic school. But they hadn't gotten me baptized or whatever. So I was like 5 years old and I got baptized so that I could go to the Catholic Church. And I'm being told about, what it means and all this stuff. And I wasn't so young that I just accepted it automatically, but I was still in that kind of, you know, mostly things that your parents tell you at that age, you pretty much believe. But I was still, it was still something very new to me. Right. So I was questioning and thinking about it and trying to understand it all. And, it felt like magic to me, incense, candles and singing and chanting and all this stuff. And the transmutation or
the body, Eucharist.
Yeah, I can't remember the specific word right now, but and the body and the blood and all that stuff. And it seems like kind of dark magic, really, but you're told that it's good, right? Anyways, I grew up in that kind of environment, and also with a lot of Native American, cultural things as well, like some of the superstitions and some of the folklore and such of the Ojibwe tribe. And so I grew up with this kind of combination of things, and I'm exploring and all this stuff. Eventually, I feel like a calling to the priesthood, but I don't feel like I can do that in the Catholic Church because, I'm the more I learn about it, the less I agree with it. And, someday I wanted to have a family, and, you can't do that as a Catholic priest and that kind of thing. So I realized, okay, this isn't for me. I really don't agree with most of the stuff. And but I still have that calling. I still feel that drive that to get involved in some way in the spiritual quest and path, and help others through it as well. So I started exploring different religions and spiritual systems, and I eventually ended up getting into I would say Golden Dawn style ritual magic and tarot. And I was roughly about 17 when I got really serious about that kind of stuff. And so I start practicing that. When I turn 21, then I am old enough to join freemasonry.
Okay.
And so I start looking into it, and eventually I ended up deciding to go into co-masonry, where it's not as big, but it's men and women equally, and there's a much higher focus on the esoteric side of things.
Okay.
Because if I just joined like a regular mainstream lodge, a male only lodge or whatever, you know, the chances of me finding somebody in there that is interested in talking about the esoteric side of things, you know, it's kind of hit or miss. But that was the main reason I got into it. I wasn't getting into it to, you know, for networking or, you know, to do charity work or that kind of thing. I was in it because I wanted to learn about the esoteric teachings and that kind of thing. So co-masonry made sense for me. So I joined that. And as I'm going through that, I start exploring Gnosticism a bit, like Christian Gnosticism. And it's a whole new way of looking at the whole, you know, Christian mythos and that kind of thing. So I started exploring that. And then at some point after my third degree, and in that system, you can't get it in like a weekend. You know, it took me
I'm a little bit familiar. I realize how much studying and memorization there is a ton of it, isn't it?
Yeah. So I had I was at least 3 years in, I think, before I got raised to the third degree. And there was some things that I encountered in that ceremony and in the previous 2 initiations that got me thinking, and especially with some of the Gnosticism that I had been exploring. And then suddenly it just kind of like an epiphany. I realized, I understood what Lucifer meant, the real meaning, the real esoteric meaning of Lucifer. And I realized that I was a Luciferian. And it was like a big, huge moment in my life that it just kind of burned that word into my brain. I was like, Lucifer, yes, that's what I've been looking for, like my whole life pretty much, you know. And now that I understand it, you know, I have to embrace it. And then ever since, I considered myself a Luciferian.
Yeah, that's, man, your story's just like mine. I was raised in the Catholic Church until I was 18 years old. You know, my mother still calls me and asks me, if you want to go to church today? I'm like, no, I do not go to church. I had to get like 500 hours of community service to graduate high school. Did you have to do anything like that?
No, they hadn't put that in yet when I graduated.
Yeah, well, I got it being an altar boy. I was deep. I was an altar server. I mean, I had like the most community service hours out of everybody there. I had got an award for all the community service because I had like 3,000 hours of community service being an altar boy, and like an hour every weekend, and then plus some whatever you do afterwards. And no,
it's funny, like, they don't have altar girls.
You know what? In here in my state, there are actual altar girls.
Oh,
I remember. Yeah,
I never. Maybe I've been out of the Catholic scene for decades. So
I guess the church and whatnot, but yeah, but they do have altar girls now. I've seen.
Oh, okay.
They actually worked with me. We had to go in the back behind the altar and we put on our gowns and whatnot. The priests were always really cool to us. Like I never had a problem with a priest or anything like that. They were always cool with me. But I always thought it was weird that you had to go like do confession every like 6 months. We would go and I'd be feeling so horrible about myself. I'd be like, yeah. So I was staring at this girl's ass and my dick got hard looking at it. Like that's gotta be and it's like, okay, we'll go say 50 Hail Marys and everything will be fine. And it was so now I'm going to go pray to Mary now. Like I thought we were praying to Jesus, all this stuff. And then it wasn't until I was older that I realized that Christianity is all about sun worship. Jesus is the Son of God. He is the light of the world. So that's why they have sunrise services, Sunday sunrise services. This is why the tabernacle in the Catholic Church always faces east, because it's facing the sun rising. Priests know this. Most of them do. And but
You know what's funny? I heard I can't remember who said it, but I've heard Roman Catholicism described as like the last big pagan religion of ancient paganism.
yeah, yeah,
Which, you know, I can kind of see what they mean when they say it.
no, Christianity and paganism. Well, the Romans wanted to go from Saturnalia worship, this paganism stuff, and you can look into Saturnalia worship. That's what the elites actually are. They are a Saturnalia cult, a death cult. They're not Satanists. That's a big misconception. Like the people behind the scenes, they're if you understand Saturnalia worship, then you understand, okay, this is what they are. But the pagans, they wanted to go from the Romans to go from Christianity from paganism. So they took the holidays that were already there and just turned them into their holidays. They came out with this Bible and now the infallible word of God, and then there's 35 different versions of it that have been translated, and like it's paganism just told again. It's the story of Horus. Horus with his 4 apostles. Jesus had 12 apostles. 12 means from the 12 zodiac signs: Virgo, Aquarius, all the those signs.
Right.
But Horus's 4 apostles represented it each one of the seasons: fall, winter, summer. Right. That's how it was. Just an updated version. Horus walked on water. He cured people of blindness. He was betrayed and he was crucified, right? And there was like something about like a scorpion bit him, but the scorpion being representative Scorpio. This is why Judas and the tribes of Judah represent the Scorpio sting. It's all metaphors, it's all allegories, and then it was just updated, the story of Horus to the story of Jesus, so they could change from this paganism, the Romans, into this new Christianity thing that they wanted to get going. That's all it is, man. It's the story of Horus retold. It also happened to Krishna. There's a list of gods. These are Zeus, all of them. Like it's the exact same story. It's just retold. And Christians believe that this
Mithra.
Yeah, like it's. I can go
Sol Invictus.
Right. I could go on about this forever, man, but I'm here to talk to you, interview you, man. So
yeah, so at that point, basically, I confronted the head of the co-Masonic order that I was a part of, and I said, I asked her, what does this particular symbol mean? You know, and she goes, well, I can't say exactly. I can tell you what my interpretation is, but you know, that was kind of a thing in Freemasonry where they would, in the ritual itself, they would give you like a very surface level interpretation of some of the symbols that you were encountering, but then it was up to you to kind of dig deeper if you wanted to like look into deeper. But a lot of people, they just accepted that surface level meaning and just never thought about it again. So I'm asking her about a particular symbol that I thought was especially Luciferian, and she said, well, you know, represents, you know, the rising sun, blah blah blah, right? And so she says all these things, and I said, and she said, well, what about you? What do you think? And I said, oh, I thought it was Lucifer. And you know, and we're walking, you know, like there was one other person there, a friend of mine that was also a member, and but it was otherwise it was just the 3 of us, and she kind of stopped, like she like missed a step when I said that. And then she didn't say anything for like almost a minute, and I didn't let her off. I didn't laugh and say, ha, just kidding, or let her off on it. I waited, you know, I let that silence be uncomfortable and let her,
psychological warfare you're putting on her.
So eventually, after about like, it felt like a full minute, and in a, you know, an awkward silent minute feels like ever, right? So anyways, she says, so you figured it out?
Oh no shit, she said that.
She said that. And then she followed it up with, but don't go around telling everybody this, because there's a lot of Christians in this organization, and if they hear that, they're going to think that they've been tricked into worshiping the devil or something. But you and I understand that that's not what we mean by Lucifer, and that kind of thing. And she's kind of basically taking me into her confidence and saying this kind of stuff. And then at first I was excited. I was like, oh cool, I'm in on the secret side of things, that goes all the way up to the very top. And I start kind of exploring around and talking to people, and I found that some of the people knew about it, even people that were even just first degree members. It didn't matter what degree you were. And there were even 33rd degree members that didn't know about that kind of thing. So to me, I feel like there's at no point where it's explicitly stated, but it was a popular interpretation among a certain subsection of the membership, including the very person that was running it. Wow. And this was like a large organization that had lodges, mostly in the States, but there were a few other ones around the world. And like I said, at first I was excited, but then I got thinking about it, and I was like, you know what? It's not very Luciferian to hold back knowledge in order to manipulate somebody into participating in something that they wouldn't have participated in if they understood it, right?
Right.
That's kind of like the opposite of Luciferianism. It's not Luciferian. It doesn't mean hide the light. It doesn't mean hide the knowledge or the truth, for your own benefit, because you want the dues from these people, the membership dues, and you want their labor, and as them performing functions in the order and such. It's not about that. It's about telling people the truth and undermining power structures that are built on lies and that kind of thing. This is like these people, some of these people consider themselves Luciferian, but they're acting completely opposite to the Luciferian ethos. So ultimately I had to leave. But while I was a member, I also had actually joined a Gnostic church. I found a bishop in Toronto where I was living, and talked to him, and I explained to him my understanding of Lucifer and that I considered myself a Luciferian, and we had a good long discussion, and he said that he basically agreed with pretty much most of what I had said about Lucifer, and he agreed to take me on as a student. And so while I'm doing Freemasonry, I'm also doing the Gnostic church thing. And I eventually quit the Freemasonry thing, but I get involved in a different variant, a different lineage, a different tradition. It was the Egyptian rite. Technically the full term. Oh yeah. So the full name of it at the time that I was active was the Ancient and Primitive Rite of Memphis Mizraim.
Okay.
And so I got involved in that, and I helped found a lodge in Toronto. Oh, cool. Yeah, with the egg and with the wings, and exactly. So I got involved in that, and I helped found a lodge, and we were operating in French, which was kind of fun. In Toronto,
speak
the
French?
lodge, a little bit.
Okay.
I wouldn't say I'm like fluent, but growing up in Canada, you get exposed to a massive amount of French in school, and plus I've done
French and English written on their signs, right? Both.
Yeah. So even just shopping, you're gonna get exposed to French words and stuff, like on the labels and everything. And plus I took extra like adult learning classes and done some of my own study on my own. Like I said, I wouldn't consider myself fluent, but I know a decent amount of French. I'm pretty, okay at it. And but we were operating the lodge in French, and it was kind of fun. And after 4 years of studying with that bishop, he basically took me through all of the minor and major holy orders up to and including priest.
Shit.
And then at that point, I served the Toronto congregation for like a whole year as the primary officiant. And he basically was, kind of semi-retired from his leadership. And I was like, he would be there, but he would be like off to the side, and I would do the ceremony and all that stuff for like a whole year.
Damn,
and then,
all that's crazy.
Yeah. And as part of my, seminary, my training and such, my bishop had me join the Martinist order.
Yeah, okay. I'm a Martinist. Or
Oh yeah,
the Rosicrucian order. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm participating in the Martinist order and that kind of thing. And at one point I get to the 3rd degree, the superior inconu, or unknown superior.
I'm not that high, but yeah, okay.
I never ended up getting at that point they had separated out the right to initiate people into a separate like 4th degree, and I never ended up getting the free initiator degree, but I did get the 3rd degree, the superior inconu. And at one point during that ceremony, I was taken aside by my bishop, who was the master of the lodge at that time. And he was like, okay, so what is your magical name that you're going to choose for, your work in the order as a, unknown superior? And I said, Lucifer, Frater Lucifer, I guess. And he was like, oh, well, and I was like, what's the problem? Like, hadn't we been over this like 5 years ago? And he was like, well, the thing is, like, I get what you mean, but a lot of these people here in the Martinist order, they haven't taken it that far. Like their Gnostic their understanding of Gnosticism and that thing, a lot of them, they're not going to understand what you mean by it. So he said, you know what, just pick Lucian, Frater Lucian. It basically means the same thing. Yeah. And I was kind of disappointed, but I was like, okay, whatever, right? And so we went through the rest of the ceremony and did it, and but it bugged me, it felt like the same kind of thing as I had encountered in the co-Masonic order. And I was like, you know what, I don't want to hide that I'm a Luciferian. It feels disingenuous. It feels like I'm not maintaining my integrity, to kind of hide this from people. And, I want to be upfront about it. And if people don't want to be involved, then they shouldn't be involved. I don't want to trick people into being involved into something that they're not knowledgeable of, that they're not going into it with the knowledge, right? So I was like, it's not right. So I had to quit that too, ultimately. Yeah. And that involved, becoming inactive in the church as well. But then I ended up joining the OTO for a little while. Oh, and the Golden Dawn. I was involved in both of those for periods of time, but both of them were really culty.
Oh yeah, the Golden Dawn.
Oh God.
Oh my God, I was in the Golden Dawn, and yeah, that shit is it's too weird. All the gowns and the ceremonies and stuff. Yeah, it's culty as
like
shit.
The ritual stuff I didn't mind, but the it felt like the trying to control your life.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It was crazy.
Work. They're going to make you, they really brainwash the shit out of you. Like the first 2 years, it's just like shadow work that they're making you do. Like, I wasn't in it long. Like, I wasn't for me. Like, but I do like the philosophy behind it, but I don't want to actually be in it, man. It's just like it was a good experience, to ultimately that I learned some things and I got to see how different organizations work and that kind of thing. But ultimately I couldn't be in it because it was just too,
and it was like it was too right hand path as well. Like they're really like you know, like a Golden Dawn. They don't deal with sex magic whatsoever. Like if you even mention it, you know, they're like, shut the fuck up, you know, like don't talk about that or you're gonna get kicked out or something, right?
Oh yeah.
And it's funny because I was involved in the OTO for a few years, and that ended up going south because of some stupid decision by like international headquarters. Some dude that I'd never met before in my life is making these decisions over like. Anyways, I ended up becoming inactive in that, and I went back to the Golden Dawn again because I was like, you know, I feel like I really want to participate in some kind of group, and I went back and I quickly quit again because I was like, oh yeah, I totally forgot like all the stupid reasons that I'd quit in the first place, and so that was short lived, and so I was like, you know what, I gotta start something that is explicitly Luciferian. And I was getting ready to start something up, and I was starting to write some things down. But then I was like, you know what? Let me drop my ego here a bit and see if something exists out there that's already, you know, in alignment with the way that I feel about this kind of thing. Right. I ended up finding a group called the Ordo Luciferi, and I read their material, and I was like, this is pretty close. So I ended up joining it. Eventually, I ended up becoming the head of it.
No shit.
And then I realized, you know, I was trying to really what it was a structure and a set of teachings, and otherwise it was just an online discussion group. Otherwise than that, there wasn't even barely any rituals for it. And there was no initiation ceremonies or anything like that. It was just, when it started, it was just the guy who had started it telling you, okay, now you're a second degree, or, you know, I recognize you as a third degree now, or whatever, right? And then when I took over, I wrote a bunch of rituals for it and got all that stuff going. But I realized that the kind of the entrenched leadership that was in there, they were abusing their titles, like, which didn't even really mean anything at the time because they hadn't done a bunch of, you know, they hadn't gone through initiation ceremonies or anything like that. It was just a former guy had said, okay, now you're a third degree or whatever. And then new people would come in and they would get hazed, like bullied like crazy. And then if they stuck around, then it was like, oh, good, these guys can handle it, you know, and it was all this kind of very toxic kind of culture. And I called it out. And I said, you know what? These degrees are just bullshit. And and I just kind of laid out like a passionate case for it. And then people realized, oh yeah, this is kind of bullshit. And the whole thing kind of collapsed. And then people were like, well, I kind of miss the structure and that kind of thing. So I kind of rebuilt it, but I made it into like an open source resource that people could like utilize. And then off and on, people would get involved here and there, but I didn't really give it a ton of more energy than that because I kind of wanted to, like I wanted to do my own thing in a sense. So I ended up in 2008, I created the Luciferian Research Society, which was like an online community hub for people that were not just Luciferian, but all branches of the left-hand path could come together and cross-pollinate ideas and share with one another and collaborate on projects, and just have like fellowship across multiple traditions. You know, like Satanists were getting involved, Luciferians, Setians, you know, dark pagans, you know, Thelemites, even though that's not technically a left-hand path, there's a lot of left-hand path elements within it and that kind of stuff, you know. And I got a lot of people getting together, and ultimately I ended up saying, you know, this is so positive and things are going, it's really helping the community, you know, form a community. Whereas before you had all these separate pylons, you know, that were all isolated kind of traditions. And I was like, I got to bring this into the real world, not just being an online community center or whatever you want to call it. So I started the first International Left Hand Path Conference back in 2012. And this was the first major that I'm aware of left hand path themed conference that wasn't specifically for members of a particular order.
Okay.
So different orders would have their own kind of conferences and such, but it was all for members. And like I said, it was like they were all in their own individual isolated silos. So I was like, let's bring this into the real world. And I created the first International Left Hand Path Conference in Toronto in 2012. And there was a big art show, Lightbringers art show. And it was amazing. And so kept doing it.
Hold on, Jerry. Hold on. So we've hit the 30-minute mark, and I can't go much longer to upload this. So we're going to have to do a part 2. Everybody, I'm telling you, Jeremy is such an amazing guy. He's got so much going on for this movement. If you hear everything that he's saying, that he's done, he's doing, and this that you haven't even really talked about what you're really
yeah, I mean, right now I'm working on I'm developed a system of occultism that I call Luciferian alchemy. And I've got an esoteric order that I'm teaching it through called the Novus Ordo Luciferi. But there's a handful of steps between what we were just talking about and what we're doing now.
Yeah. Well, and we're going to do a part 2. We're going to absolutely have to follow up, man, like in a week or so. I mean, Jeremy, tell everybody how they can contact you, where you're at, and go ahead with that.
Yeah, so the best thing to do would be to go, I would say, check out the Luciferian Research Society, especially if you can join the Discord. There's a public Discord that is just free and open to anybody that wants to participate can join that, and it's pretty big. I got hundreds of people in there.
There's a lot of going on in there. I'm a part of that. Yeah, that's how I found you.
Yeah, it's kind of like a portal to all the other projects that I'm doing. So that I would say get in there. There's a lot of cool people that are involved in a bunch of different, their own unique things, and people are sharing knowledge and working on projects together. It's really cool. And there's a website for it too. It costs like $1 a month just to keep the bills paid, but don't even bother with that at first. Join the Discord, which is free. Check it out, see what you think, and then if you feel like it, then get involved in some of the other projects like Novus Ordo Luciferi.
And I'm a part of that. There's a lot going on with that group, and we're going to
we have like about 11 different countries represented in the order.
That's a lot, man. Yeah, I really have to cut this off so I can upload this, brother. Thank you so much for coming on here, man. Obviously, times I'm going to speak to you off camera, man. But thank you. I cannot thank you enough, man, for coming.
Yeah, man, no problem. Thanks for having me on. Hail Lucifer, hail thyself.
All right, brother. And I will see you. Peace, bro.